Everywhere now. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Open Source Diaries, where we listen to stories and discuss the endless possibilities of open source across different fields and sectors. I am Anita Haven as usual, and today we're diving into a topic that is generating a lot of buzz and questions in the industry. Is AI good or bad for open source? At this point, I think AI is everywhere. We see it affecting how developers are building projects, how they're contributing to projects, reviewing pull requests, and even learning new technologies, right? But with this popularity, it's also raising a lot of important questions about contributor quality, the maintainership of project, licensing, trust, and so many other questions in between, right? And to help us unpack all of these, I have today with me George Castro, an open source community leader and developer relations at CNCF, who is going to be breaking down all of our questions. Welcome, George. Happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So, if you don't know about George yet, I'm sure you should Google him, but I'll share the introduction much later. But he has done a whole lot when it comes to open source, and his unique perspective on how AI is influencing developers is something that I am keen to find out about. But before we dive in, George, I'd love to start with your own work. We spend a whole lot of time working with maintainers. I know that you do this on a day to day. Contributors across different organizations that are, and also like different developers that are also adopting open source and AI in between. So, like from where you sit, right? What would you say, or what changes have you noticed in the open source ecosystem over the past years, and how much of that has been impacted by AI?
So I've I'm really deep into this stuff right now, and I would even tell you that in the past 25 years that I've been doing open source, in the past 2 weeks, every good thing about open source has been reinforced with me, and everything that we need to fix in open source has been made very apparent to me. And I think right now in this month, as of now, the amount of change that is going through the open source ecosystem is unprecedented. I've lived through the cloud revolution twice. The first one in 2008, AWS. Oh no, it's just a Linode with an API, right? Oh no, it changed the world. Kubernetes, and
Change
now
everything.
AI. Every time there's one of these, it accelerates, it's faster, and it's always open source that has to go first. And the way we
Yeah.
handle this sets the standard for the rest of the industry. So when we struggle with something and we're trying to figure it out, it's indicative of just how profound the change is. If I came onto this thing and says, we're the CNCF, we have over 240 projects, most of which run modern infrastructure in the world, this is how we're going to solve the problem. Right? I cannot do that. And I don't think anybody can. Right? Over
No.
thousands of years of production uses of distributed systems. And we have the Kubernetes AI policy was released maybe 3 weeks ago. You know? So projects are figuring it out. We have projects that are banning, right? We have projects that are embracing it. We have it's eternal September all over again. For those of you who do not know, I grew up in the internet where you had to go to college to get internet. So in September, when all the kids went to college, you had internet, and they would all join the internet at the same time. And it was called Eternal September because they didn't know the etiquette of being on the internet and things like that. You're an open source maintainer, you're stressed out as it is, and you get a pull request
Yeah.
automated from a thing from someone who probably has good intentions, who sees a thing and says, wow, I can do this now, I can help, but isn't given a structure to do so. And this is what we're struggling with right now, right? However, there are those of us that are also mastering the technology, and we want to use it to our advantage because it is profound, but it's also very noisy. And I think we need to talk about our mistakes, our approaches, a little bit more and do what I think the industry expects as open source people to do: lead the way
Yeah,
and
true.
tell them we listen to our users and here's what we want. That was a lot. So let me, that's where I'm at right now, because my answer changes almost every day at this point.
I completely agree with you,
Yeah.
George. And I think there's so much uncertainty around this topic, and it seems to be changing how people are also like participating in open source. And the communities themselves have lots of questions. But like I'm curious, when you hear is AI this question of is AI good or bad for open source, what is your instinctive answer?
Yes.
Yes, it's great. Yes, it's
It's
going to
both.
do
It's
wonders.
everything. Right now I am making things. I make my passion projects called Project Bluefin. It's an operating system for your computer, right? And I worked on Ubuntu, and we worked on this thing
Mhm.
called Launchpad. And back then, same thing. Distributed version control came out, and I was around. And back then, developers didn't even have version control. They had Microsoft Windows Samba shares, right? And they would like drag and drop, and that's how people did development in like Windows shops in the 90s. And then distributed version control came out. Remember the first time you used Git? It was a
Yeah, yeah,
nightmare. I
yeah.
don't How many times have people
Oh my
destroyed
goodness.
production, right? Um,
Because you don't know how to get.
until the senior person said, I'm going to put in these things called branch controls and work processes and a pull
Mhm.
request, and a bot will make sure that you never accidentally merge and that it goes into a queue, and that developer processes that queue, and we make efficient things, and then we professionalize that. And that's open source magic, right? And we want to use the clankers. I just call them the clankers because it's kind of funny, and we want the clankers to do that work for us. But I don't want the clankers to have that kind of responsibility over my operating system. It literally has access to the hardware. Hmm? Meanwhile, you're seeing the news of people who are using OpenClaw wrong, and security. You can have 3 shows like this just talking about AI's impact on security. Just security in general is profound changes. So um, it is good and it is bad. I am making, at my skill level, I am making some of the best stuff I've ever made in my life, and it's also some of the worst stuff I've made in my life. But it solves a problem. It's like, this thing is awful. I know someone's going to make fun of me, but the test is green. The test is green. Ugh.
So oh my god, George, you just said something that makes so much sense to me. That yes, there's an unending possibility when it comes to the use of AI, especially with open source. I myself built a tool recently to analyze resumes, and so many persons are using it for their job applications, and it's completely open source. And it was a pet project, but then because of how people were interested in it, I'm like, okay, you can have it, you can make use of it as well. And that made me realize that I could build a project even without being like a senior back end engineer or a senior front end engineer, right?
Mhm.
And it's really interesting to see things from that perspective. But then there's this other point of view where you're trying to be practical, right? Where we ask questions like, where do you think AI is having like the biggest impact for open source? And you mentioned things like code review and people going through Git struggles and all. So do you think writing code is the best that it has done? Is it documentation? I know there's so many issues up around that. Is it the
Mhm.
testing aspect? Is it the onboarding? Which
Mm.
area have changed the most? And what do you say about this?
I only came to this conclusion yesterday after talking to a colleague. Is we are spending billions of dollars to figure out how to manage non-deterministic agents. Do you know who the most non-deterministic species on the planet is? Us,
Humans.
developers. You know who has the most expertise dealing with developers? Your developer relations people, your community managers, the people, the
Yeah.
soft skills that you think we would be doubling in on. And then you read the news and it's like, oh no, why are we all getting laid off? These are the people that should be leading the way, right? Um,
Yeah.
So in a way, I kind of look at that, and I look at the people who did this job, who are reinventing themselves, who are getting in there with the engineers, and it is sloppy. The stuff that comes, like, if you think you're going to do a brownfield deployment and convert an existing repo and your contributors will be happy, that is not true. You have to have policies. You have to have things that are boxed off. I had to have my policy for my previous project removed from me so I could prototype with the agent, because the agent wanted to send unwanted contributions to my project. And Mike and Renner, one of the guys, he's like, I don't want that slop in my repo. Like, and at the end of the day, why risk losing one of your key contributors when what I want to do is have the thing do the work that Renner doesn't want to do. But in order to figure that out, the number one thing I've noticed is documentation, because that helps both the humans and the bots. If you send an agent to a repo and it gets lost, what I am telling people is invest in the documentation in that. I think people are being, I don't know what happened.
Hello.
Yep. I don't know. It's like, did you cut off? Did me cut off? I don't know.
No, you're fine. It's just
okay. All right. Yeah, so I find myself in the ironic thing where I'm talking to some open source maintainers, and they're like, "Well, we want to ban all AI things. I'm tired of the reviews and da 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 da," And I find myself working with a guy on Kubestellar making. I need an endpoint so I can say, "Send your agent here." I want to organize all of the clankers. I want to say, go to workitems.projectbluefin.io. Send your agent there. And then a thing says, here's some issues. Give the agents the tracks. Similar to how we put in enforcement at the code level so people wouldn't accidentally blow themselves up with Git. You have to do the same thing with AI. The problem is AI moves way faster.
Yeah.
Git unlocked distributed version control. For those people who haven't been around for a long time, when developer was monolithic, open source was very fast. And once it became distributed, it was all over for monolithic systems at that point. Once open source and the internet and Linux distributed version control, like you can look at the science, So when that kind of thing happens, the thing is with AI, it happens twice as fast. And there is the mental aspect. I feel very confident when I use it. And I know I did something correctly until I give it to somebody who actually knows what they're doing, and they're used an agent and they said, nope, you made these wrong assumptions, you made these wrong assumptions, and you made these wrong assumptions. And you're reminded, that this is a great prototyping tool, but there is no mistake for an expert. I spent 3 weeks trying to fix a thing in Project Bluefin. It was driving me insane. I used Opus. I used everything. I was burning tokens. I finally gave up and gave it to one of the kids who doesn't like AI. 3 lines. He says, oh, the stupid thing fixed this thing, whatever. And he fixed it, right? 3 weeks of building this fantastic agentic OS factory thing with AI and amazingness ground to a halt. And the expert in the field fixed it in 1 line, right? So we hear the stories of people using Opus to build these amazing things, right? But you always forget that expert person. You give that guy AI versus me, he could actually build something. The problem is how do we get this in open source? And it's difficult because when you add AI, scaling is different. More people actually hurts. If you have more than 3 people with agents working in the same repo, now you have to orchestrate agents. Now you have Gastown, and it's like Kubernetes again. And you're like, oh, dude, I have a better idea. You're just in charge of this thing for a while. Yeah. And what we're doing is we're actually utilizing the things that we are supposed to be using for the humans anyway. Better labels, better documentation. Every single folder has a README that says this is what this module does. And when people say, you know what, I don't know anything about AI, but that docs folder is a very good way for a brand new person to learn to onboard into something. right? Because if the clanker can read that, you're a human being with reasoning and skill. You can use that in addition to the official documentation
That
and a
already exists.
supportive community of people who will answer your questions. That is the conversation I want to have. And it's it's pretty fun. I don't know. What do
Yeah,
you think so far? Is
it's
this
really,
crazy or what? Yeah.
I find it interesting and also like crazy at the same time.
Hmm.
Because like we talk about maintenance are like really really critical, especially in times like this, because
Hmm.
there are times where you give a prompt and then the AI probably generate thousands of lines, but these lines could also be executed in like 5 to 10 lines, right?
Yeah.
So like you're getting feedback in a very very fast time, but I feel like it takes the longer route to actually execute those things that an engineer would take a shorter route to do, but the speed is actually there. So now this brings to the question of, does this speed actually equal to like quality? Because maintainers often review these pull requests, and it obviously takes longer than to review these AI pull requests than actually reviewing the humanly sent in pull requests, right? And so, will you say this is helping people generate code and also helping the project, or would you say that this has shifted the quality when it comes to like contributions generally?
I think it depends. I've seen a pull request to see the review bots arguing with each other. I don't know if you've seen that more in the early days or whatever. I think that the key is, I think with a lot of these developers, so in the CNCF, we get access to a lot of these tools. One of them is CodeRabbit. And if you just turn on CodeRabbit, it will spam you. Same with Gemini. It will spam you and it will give you this thing and you will make the joke about like how terrible AI is. If you spend 2 hours reading their documentation and working on the actual prompt, this is what's very interesting is it's not just configuring their product. It is modeling how you expect that agent to interact with your project, right? That
Yeah,
means, like we put things in place, things like update a comment in place. Don't keep posting comments, right? And no matter what you do, the LLM is going to find a way to reason that it needs to post a new comment to tell you because it found something, right? So we invest in tools, and I'm looking at tools that kind of add that granularity policy enforcement, similar to how FinOps tools work for
mm-hmm.
Kubernetes. Like you leave an instance accidentally running in a cloud, you can have a policy that says if George hasn't touched the thing, kill it so it doesn't burn money. So FinOps, there's a lot of lessons from the finance community on how to save money on resources. With AI, it's different because we don't know what a token costs like. We even started a foundation called the Tokenomics Foundation. This is not made up, for people to figure out a unit of work and the cost of a token and the capability, right? And it is a science to try to figure that out because we all were used to getting bills with funny money on it. Now there's real
Yes.
money on it. And now everyone's wondering where the business value is. And they are all looking to us to explain to
Yeah.
them the business value of this. Um, but you look at all the zeros, and I'm just an individual open source contributor. I have no idea how this circle thing happens. I've been
Mhm.
to economics and stuff, but there's really, what can I do as an individual contributor, other than try to do my best to ensure that my contributors are utilizing the technology to the best of their ability, opt in, user controlled, whatever destiny they want to forge with this thing, they want to. But we also need to recognize that it is like Git. I have accidentally messed up in production with AI. Of course. Yeah. The only reason I didn't burn my users is we're smart enough to renter to say, you should experiment, but also we need to remove your production access to everything. Thinking about that process, you know,
Yeah.
thinking about that process is, I think, what open source people need to start to do, because I would be a fool to not try to figure out how to put the clankers to work. I don't want to sit there approving dependabot all day. I've got stuff to do. you know. Um, and I also question, if someone's coming into the industry, figure out how to write tests by hands the first few times. Do we want to send our best and brightest people to like write tests and do the, oh man, I really want them innovating, don't you? You know?
Yeah, yeah.
um,
And I find it very interesting, right? Because there's like this whole debate about what makes a contributor to a project, right?
yeah,
And if someone uses AI to generate most of like their code base that they're putting out for open source project, but understand the problem that they're solving, are they any less a contributor to that project or a developer to that particular project? And
yeah.
or has this actually changed what it means to be a contributor to a project? Because like there was this debate one time where people were actually ashamed of verbally saying that they use AI to write code or to like
Oh yeah.
improve on their software or even build projects with AI as a whole. Right. And so like, should someone say they're less of a developer because they use AI, or has that actually not changed at all and is the same concept altogether?
I will tell them the same thing their boss is going to tell them. What is your outcome? What is your outcome? Did you ship a product? Did it do what it says it does on the tin? Right now, people are arguing over the how it's made, and as open source people, we have no choice but to have those discussions. We're open communities. We have to talk about it out loud and do that kind of thing. I have had people quit our project. I have had people attack our contributors for doing this. I
Yeah.
strongly believe that um, open source has always had people who will attack people who do not follow their perceptions or whatever, you know.
Yes.
Um, so I think AI is a tool, and I think a lot of people are like, well, I don't like that George is not taking a stand on this. I've had people saying it's like you're talking about leadership and leading the way. What are we doing to the planet, right? But also we need to understand I've been doing this for 25 years, and in the space of this call, Kubernetes, a project that I've worked on, has killed
Mm-hmm.
people. People are dead, right? So I don't have the luxury of like, oh no, the planet is burning down. Open source took over everything. Society is society. All I can do is control what's in front of me, and I see a very powerful tool. And I don't know what to say. Um, and I was so perplexed. What we're gonna do as a community? We're making a comic book about open source maintainers struggling with AI, and we're gonna make it a musical. And I am not making that up. It's just so ridiculous where it's like it feels like I'm not only fighting against the clankers, I'm fighting against my own people. Are we really all on the same side? And then it starts to feel a little bit weird when people get toxic about attacking others for using or not using AI.
It's
When you
very
tell people use AI, but don't put the attribution because they'll make fun of you. Now we have people lying. There's no, there. How do we end up in this situation where we are telling open source contributors to lie about their contributions? That's not right.
yeah.
So and then I look to others. Ghosty Mitchell, he's clearly using agents. They're figuring out ways to adapt their processes so they can take advantage of that. So I look to projects like that
Mm-hmm.
that really kind of are trying to figure it out. Hiding isn't going to do anything. It's going to make it worse. Because I do think that there are people out there that do have access to $100 of tokens, and they have a right to contribute. And they can buy a Bluefin shirt, or they can fix an actual bug in the Linux kernel. If I can get an API that can help contributors fix a bug in the Linux kernel, what does that say about our sustainability? Right? And Linus and both Greg we have the data. They are picking up real bugs, and the bad guys are going to use agents whether we like it or not. So as open source people, I feel like we're charged with the duty to use this thing. You personally, that's up to you. Your personal open source journey is your personal open source journey. You know?
That's that leads me to a very interesting question, especially when you're talking about like people who have tokens to also like put out there.
Yeah.
And there are people that are building open source projects that are strictly based off AI platforms. And
Hmm.
we know that these tools need tokens in order to like be maintained or to like be sustained, right? And for the open source aspects of things where tokens are also costing a whole lot of money,
Hmm.
how do projects that are built, open source projects that are built with AI, survive that costs, that sinking costs part of things?
Yep. I will tell you what I've been spending the past month staying up until 1 a.m. doing is using the frontier models on my own open source project to make as many
Hmm.
things as deterministic as possible. And
Okay.
over time, we are setting goals of like we started with Opus, then we switched to Sonnet. And now we've got a local model running an agentic operating system hosted on a local model right now. And every time we update that documentation and that new person adds a doc, it lowers the ability for people to use local models. At the same time, the rate of local models improvement over the last 6 months, look at the chart. It's only a matter of time. Open always wins. Open
Yeah.
always wins. In you will be surprised on just how capable these local models are. Utilizing them to our advantage as open source projects is something that we all need to be involved in. So there's a project in the CNCF called Cube Stellar. They have a thing called Hive, which is kind of like run your own orchestration thing. And he has a CI
Yeah.
agent that has a local, you can connect to your local client. And when your CI goes down in your project, it will do a thing, right? If we're doing it wrong, we are making that an agentic workflow and say, go debug a thing. And now you have to pay for a bunch of tokens, you know?
Hmm.
But if the thing is, this is wrong, run this deterministic script, send this email, page this person, that is a little bit of a smarter cron for way less money that can really, really remove a lot of jank from open source maintenance, right? You give open source maintainers a little bit of smarter renovate slash dependabot, you know,
Yeah.
if a release has been more than a month and I missed it, we always have that issue that's important, but you missed it. If I can run an agent once a month on my issues, hey, did I miss anything important? They're actually pretty good at that, you know,
True.
and we can use that. I think the problem is people think that we're just going to have agents writing the entire operating system and that you're going to, you know, and people will do
But
that and it will be
that's disaster for chaos though.
spectacular disasters. We're in
That's
for some entertainment too. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Some terrible products. So we should celebrate these terrible products because they're going to be so bad, right? But at the same time, we can learn so much. And every time we're doing it, we're training our local models to be better and better and better. Then we can say, look, before AI, I had my home lab. The computers would sit there humming all day long, testing bluefin. After AI, I have a home lab of computers humming, testing all day long, you know, building bluefin. It's all math at the end, you know. I don't know
Yeah.
what to say about the societal aspects. That's not up to me, you know. I'm just trying to make it to the next day and close a pull request today, right? So
Yeah. True.
in a way, you want to be fast and keep up, but man, you don't want to commit too early. It was risky. It was risky for me, for us to say we want to go agentic, knowing that people were going to quit. The existing people were going to quit, you know, and at some point you have to do the math in your brain. Is the AI worth it? You know?
No, that also like raises a very interesting question about automating most of the processes to save
Mm-hmm.
time and also the learning aspect of things. Now, with open source, we know that developers used contributing to open source as a means to learn. And now, so most of these developers are relying on like the um, AI to like make their contributions. Even persons that
Mm-hmm.
are doing like internships and stuff. So, do you think there's like a risk that developers would skip the deeper learning that traditionally came in with like debugging and also reading source code and then collaborating with maintainers when it comes to these AI generated pull requests?
I would say that this is going to sound like a broken record, you know, but I think good maintainers who would be good pre AI, those same properties, you give that
Sorry.
person AI and they will elevate. I think one of the things I noticed when I talk to developers, I was like, how busy are you? They're like, man, I am so productive. I am so productive right now. I am making some, but it's like a distortion pedal, where like I used to deliver to my boss 10 things a week, and like one or two needed adjustment. Now I give him 30 things a week, but 12 of them are disasters. So and what does that do? That's discipline on my part, but also we are encouraged to experiment and do that. So if your organization has that kind of openness to do that, and I'm lucky, I get to play with the open source tools, and we get to figure it out together.
Yeah.
Some people don't have that luxury. They're struggling at work, and they're like, this is the tool, it's the one you don't want, right? And like, you have to make it, and that it's attached to some metric or you're going to get in trouble. So you're trying to figure out how to fit this thing into your life, and you have open source maintainers who are like, I didn't even want these things I didn't want to manage people's pull requests, let alone automated ones. Now you have these things up in my face, and it makes things that we used to depend on as rocks, right? The Debian social contract hasn't changed for 25 years.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe any of that stuff anymore. It's almost like I am more concerned on how easy it is to fork stuff despite the cost of tokens. Easy it is, and keep the changes to yourself and not give back. My concern is when open source projects say no AI, is somebody's just going to fork the thing, and I would prefer the people who are experts in the thing already maintain the thing than some of them are going to be bad people, and there's going to be bad software in there, and people are going to download stuff and it's going to be bad, and everyone's going to say, look how bad this was before AI. I was like, we had bad people before AI. They're just 10 times as productive now. And if they get better at this than the average open source maintainer, society is going to be in a lot of trouble. Yes. And we have to say this, and we have to take it seriously. So that's kind of why I'm so passionate about it, and I'm so proud of like our communities on how they try to figure it out. Like when you see the care that the open telemetry people put into their policy, and then watching the Kubernetes people put holes in it, and going back and forth, but in a respectful manner, in the way that we want, right? Like we want people to be passionate. We know this is affecting society, right? Like my friends notice my behavior changing after AI, right? Like I look like a manic crazy person, and I'm already on top of the Puerto Rican thing, right? It's 2 a.m. and you can wake up and ship a thing that would have taken me 6 months in Ubuntu. 6 months. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I typed /plan and I pasted in something, and I woke up the next morning and it was there. Yeah. And, does that meet the quality of shipping something to my Bluefin users that day, knowing my coworkers depend on this? I don't know. Do I feel like it is? Absolutely 100%, which is why I have to have the discipline to say, okay, everybody, let's write tests, because you do feel like you can cheat, and that's a trap. And we know that's a trap. And I feel myself drawn to it constantly. And the AI, it's like, you can totally build this tonight if you wanted to. The maintenance is not as bad as you think. And you feel it, and you're like, oh man, that last thing I shipped, people loved it. Yeah, and you feel it. And you can feel when your friends are like, he's taking on too much. Here's, this, and you can see it. Some of my less smart pull requests, they sit there, nobody reviews them, because the clankers don't merge the code. We set a label, and then a human has to do that. We set a human gate, so it's like projects, we have to talk about your human gate. What is a clanker or not? Like there are people who are not coders who I want to give higher permissions to, because I trust them as people in the project, even though they don't have the hacking skills. They have the vision of we want the product to be, and I want them to drive the clankers. I want them to feel like I feel. You ever just sit there and say, I wish I had the skill to change these 3 things in these lines. I know how to do it on my computer, but shipping it to users, entirely different thing, right? But if we give them the tools, the testing, the locks in place, like if you want to learn Git, freehand. But boy, does it really help when a Git expert sets up the rails for you and shows you how a professional uses Git. How fast were you then? This is the same thing, other than the huge side effects that we didn't get. um,
That also like brings him back something, especially when you're talking about the whole trusting. And I know
yeah,
that in the open source space, we often talk about building projects, fucking repositories, all based on, okay, we trust that this human is going to use this for good or
yeah,
whatnot, right? And today it's easy for anybody to actually fuck a project and then obviously generate their own tokens and then use that project without creating a pull request. And so, how does this whole AI wave affect that relationship of trust within the open source space?
man, what a question. It's interesting. It's I go with what you know. Like it, it sounds like a commercial when I say there's a reason projects come to the CNCF, because they do
Hmm.
know that we talk about things like that. We have staff like myself whose whole job is to figure this out and help maintainers do this. So the Apache
Yeah.
Foundation still exists, right? Python Foundation still exists. PyTorch, all of these organizations exist for trust of controlling the one thing that we can control as open source maintainers, that logo,
Yes.
right? That logo. That is the power that we have, and I guess it's the patent protection that we need, legal, and then all that legal stuff that nobody wants to do. Yeah. So I think now more than ever, that trust system of developers that they have, uh, your camaraderie in that ecosystem. If you write an app in Go, try to go to a Golang conference. You know, try to understand the values of the community of the thing that you're depending on. And the way we
Yeah.
do that at the CNCF is we write tools for our end users that say these are the strategic projects to your business. It's got to be business aligned. And then we are working on giving them a dashboard so that they say, okay, these projects are healthy, right? We're large, Kubernetes has this green, green, green. Oh, this one is yellow. And the sophisticated end users say, you know what, this is critical to our business. This is an area where we can help out. And what the organizations realize is when they all work together, it's cheaper for everybody. It's just cheaper for everybody. So we need to have the AI conversation along with that, because now the costs, you add 5 zeros to every number, all of a sudden the math is wrong, you know? Um, all of a sudden, is the juice worth the squeeze is the most important thing I've been saying this entire month. I think I've said that this month more than I have in my entire career, because you can actually squeeze every orange if you really wanted to. But that doesn't mean it's smart, but like also it's kind of cool to squeeze a lot of oranges and see what comes out, because
Yes.
for all of the joking we make of someone making, funny slop, we have this guy, James, he like comes out with this crazy stuff. And every third one, he comes out with something that is just incredible, and we are all right. And I do the same thing, right? I've
Yeah.
done man, I wasted an entire night on a direction that didn't matter, right? If we were doing that by hand, the risk that I would have had to put my project in to take that
A
risk
lot. The
I
time.
would have had to convince people. And what if I'm wrong? I'm always wrong. Like now you're second guessing yourself as a maintainer. Now we're adding mental health issues to our main. You see, it's all connected. It's all connected, so like we have to think about those things. And I'm a huge advocate for this. Is now is the time to start thinking about anthropology, zoology. Now our maintainers, our engineers, mental health, physical health, like all of the whole that whole thing. AI affects all of it. If AI affects your mental health, the knowing that I
Facts.
can knowing how much of my life I wasted making a thing that I just did like this, makes me feel strong, but also makes me feel, what was I doing with my prime years? Now I'm in my twilight years in my career, And I'm clearly having a midlife crisis now, right? And I'm not the only one. And we want to say something as maintainers because if you're like, ask the person, what's the person next to me doing? I am lost. I know I have to go in this direction, and I feel it's okay for us to say that. It's okay for us to say, it's okay for projects to say, I don't know. I don't want to ban everything, but I also don't want to do this. I have pressures
Yeah.
at work. I have maintainers who are smart and they have pressures at work to use this, but I don't want to introduce a cost dependency in my project. It's easy to say, oh, the discipline, lock it all down, switch to local models or whatever. Actually walking that path, I have yet to do so. And we're about to find out, because if it's, everybody has to figure it out, and I think that sharing that safe space, we're missing the safe space in AI. That sucks. I hate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so real.
Yeah.
And I think the word safe space also, it's so profound because now we're questioning a lot of things. Open source comes down to like the licensing, ownership, and the responsibilities of things, right? And today there's so many questions that we don't have straightforward answers for, right? Is it right? Is it wrong? We actually don't have straightforward answers for this. But do you think today's open source licenses and governance models are equipped to handle this code? And is this something that we should also worry about?
Um, Licenses, not my specialty. Governance is my specialty. Having helped write a ton of governance for Kubernetes and it's a lot of this boilerplate on how to, I want to throw it all away. It's interesting because I want to have governance that, I don't want to say agent first because now that's really controversial, right? But a lot of the things that we do when checking governance in open source projects are a checklist, right? That
Yes.
CNCF talk looks at stuff. Do you follow your release process? Do you have semantic versioning? Do you earn these badges from the OpenSSF? Are you signing? All the stuff that you need to do are all run books, right? We could be using LLMs to do a way better job than this. And here's an
Yeah.
example. When we judge maturity in an open source project, the bullet right there says, does it support every operating system, including Linux? Because people want to know, right? That gets assigned to a person on the TOC, senior person, staff person, usually, a senior member and an open source leader within their company looks at that page and then makes a determination. And that says, let me look at Linux. And then they look at it and it says, okay, it has Ubuntu or whatever, all of this kind of stuff. Then we depend on that person to make a choice on whether that project is supporting Linux, Mac, and Windows properly. We need that person to make that judgment call. But what I want to use LLMs for is, right now, we're sending a staff engineer to go figure out a list of Linux packages on a page, whether to determine whether that project is successful or not. I could have an LLM just analyze the pipelines, look at the matrix charts against what we know, what's supported, and then we say, look, check this out. This project supports Linux. Boom, 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 boom. Except this one of the top 10 Linuxes used by everybody else is not. Noted. Now we give that information to that expert again, and they have a summarized executive summit. And then we say, look at this. This is the coverage that we have. And we can make better decisions. And that's just, do you support Linux or not? Imagine the security review of that project. And we have hundreds of these items that the community expects us to look at and say, you can trust this project or not. So,
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think, a way to look at it is we can use the LLMs to automate those. If we know that you have to pass every OpenSSF thing to get this badge, and we make the OpenSSF thing a deterministic thing that projects can go through, and that's documentation, which is the same thing we needed for humans this entire time, and we sucked at.
So,
like
George, I have a question
yeah.
regards this, right? Because now it's very possible to use these tools to like automate the checklist that we often use, even with like projects like Chaos. I think about it now and I see how very possible that is.
Yeah.
But over the years, we've had people who volunteer their time to do these tasks? And do you see it as a problem that those persons might not be able to contribute in that area because that is a space that they were assigned or delegated when they joined the community? And I'm saying in reference to like the CNCF project
Yeah.
process as well.
Yeah. It's a, I tell people, you were assigned this job and you were given AI.
Yeah.
If you use AI and you leave this job with something totally different from what you were assigned, but you help somebody and you have data and you have something to share and your peers look at it, that's worth it, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. And I know maintainers who would fight, and that's literally what we want you to do. We want you to figure this stuff out. And I would say I can understand, however, the anxiety. Oh, I got an open source. I got my first job. My first job is the thing a clanker is going to do next. And like if you're a student, can you imagine the draining?
Scary.
But you know what happened to me? My first contribution to Kubernetes, I spent a day writing a page of documentation, but I did not read the instructions. And when I went to submit it, and there was a guy I really wanted to impress. He worked at Google because it was my first one. I wanted to impress him. He goes, "Oh, I'm afraid we're in the middle of migrating the documentation from this one thing to the other. We're not going to be able to merge it. You'd have to rewrite it." And why? Because I didn't read the contributor guide. Oh. Right? Just as a mistake, just as dumb of a mistake as making one with a clanker, Mm-hmm. Except, so like you do make the mistakes when you didn't have the AI. What I appreciate about the AI is I fail a lot faster.
And it's easy to pick up.
Yeah, like I would have sent the clanker and it'd be like, "Oh, look, I found there's a branch. Someone did this already." And with AI, 3 different people do the same thing anyway. You kind of get that. So what you do is you look at that, you're like, "Oh, I got 3 people solving the same thing." What you do is you grab an agent, you grab all 3 PRs, you say, "Do a review," and then have the human, "All right, this one's the least shitty one," and then merge it. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear on that one.
all right. But that's an interesting perspective. And let's come back to the CNCF. Now, looking ahead, do you think that, because I don't know if this already exists, but so many projects are being built with AI today, and just like Bluefin, right? That uses AI at this point. Do you see a future where some of the projects that would be adopted under CNCF would be totally AI generated?
That's a hard one. And I say this because the important parts of an open source project aren't the code. It's going to be the meta, how the project is run, right? Do you have your weekly meetings? Are you going to do all that? So I think in that case, it is impossible for an entirely fully automated project to be in the CNCF, I think. There are projects right now in the CNCF that are using a highly automated level of automation with Hive and that are experimenting in that direction. So we are going to find out. It's kind of our job to find out anyway. I do not, honestly, it fixes a lot of stuff that I want to do, but now I find myself flooded by other parts of the project that I never had time to do. Product, design, blogs, right? And you start to also learn, I don't use Gen AI to write my blog posts, right? And our artwork is 100% human and funded by artists. We say that we are using the clankers to help us. We celebrate the human art, that's made by the human. So like part of it is like there are certain things that will always be human controlled, and that is going to be, what is the goal of this project? What passion do you want to use? Like, we're announcing a release today. What do we want to say? Right? Like no AI will look at your code and tell you, say these 5 things, right? But like you'll see you'll see the uninspired ones when they just copy and paste the things. But you can see when someone else goes back and takes that care to do the extra thing. And I am willing to bet, and I'm staking the future of my personal project on it, that the people that care will take that extra bit to add that extra little bit that makes it special. Bluefin is special for a reason, and it's not the code. right?
Yeah.
Um, However, I got a lot of slop everywhere, you know? But we have end-to-end tests. Yay. Uh,
That's a plus.
yeah.
So, so now, how do you think how do you think maintainers, organizations and foundations should evolve to preserve both the collaborative culture of open source while still maintaining the
Yeah.
productivity that AI is introducing?
I, I honestly, I think more now than ever, the stand-up meeting, your one-on-ones, you are prototyping more. I think I found so our team meets physically every 6 months. And without
Mm-hmm.
AI, that felt right. I can meet with one of my coworkers every week physically and have an entire all hands worth of content every week for all of my coworkers. Every department, marketing, I've got a whole page of marketing ideas because I now have these tools. You know, that does not mean that the CNCF is magically going to start being able to triple its marketing output, you know?
Yeah.
So we have to figure that out. We have to figure out those processes. And so I do think, I guess my one thing I want to tell people is like embrace the tools, but understand what they are for and try to use them in ways that highlight the skills that you have, you know? Like I don't use Gen AI to make art. I used AI to take the existing artwork that humans made
Mm-hmm.
and present it in a way that's beautiful, right? That's what I'm trying to do, right? So like use the AI for the meta stuff that nobody wants to do, like writing the tests and things like that. But take time to realize that gives you time to think about the passion of your project, the goal, what you want to do. Like, don't just PRs every day. When was the last time you looked at your product and said, "Oh man, this is amazing"? Think about the meta, how you're presenting yourself to users, the kind of stuff that you don't have time for because you're busy managing stuff.
Community.
And I am busier than I've ever been in my entire career, and I love it. And I'm tired.
It's interesting how there's this thrill and adrenaline that comes with using AI
Oh
to
yeah,
get things done, but then
yeah,
there's also this mental burnout that also comes from overworking your brain because you know that you have so much ideas that you need to put out and
yeah.
you're wondering, I need to do this as fast as possible because I feel like I would have done this a whole long time ago. It's just so
Lean on your
interesting.
teammates. Lean on your teammate. Like I remember when it happened when one of our VPs, her name is Joanna, she joined this call. She had clearly discovered AI that weekend because you see it when your coworkers have it. And you could tell she'd been up all night, no makeup. I was like, "What model were you using?" She's like, "How'd you know?" I was like, "Yeah, that was me 2 weeks ago." Like, and it does feel like I have bullets in my work items where my boss is like, "I want a new website with these metrics." I was like, "I am never going to get time with the web team for 2 years." And I had it in my backlog, and I went and I had the clanker do it last night.
Mhm. So interested.
We have a chart. It works. I check the numbers. Totally works. Yeah. So, use it in that way, you know? I hope this
So,
is helpful.
oh, this is so helpful
Oh,
actually,
good. Good.
and I'm wondering like, what's one principle that you hope open source as a whole, the open source community never loses, even while embracing the AI wave?
Lead the way. I think anytime there's new technology and someone says don't use it, I think that's contrary to the open source effort. I think if I see a new piece of technology, my job is open source better be the first one there. And if there's no flag planted there, whoever's closest plants that flag for open source. Right? I know local models will always win eventually, and we watch the tick, 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 tick. And even if they may not be the best ones ever, we can look at cost, price to performance. In the old
Yeah.
days, yeah, Unix is better than Linux. You're going to pay 50 times as much. Good luck building the next wave of automation on costs like that. So as these infra costs go down, consumption will go up. And I think we're going to get a ton of awful software and some fantastic software.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm here for it.
Same.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, George. I think we have come to the end of this discussion. It's
Yes.
been it's been really enlightening, and I have taken a whole lot to also think about in terms of how open source affect or is impacting bigger like AI is affecting bigger open source organizations, right? I
Yeah.
never really thought about it from the bigger scope, but now I have to like think about it. I'm like, oh, how would this project manage with this whole wave?
And it affects everybody. And don't let, you're an open source maintainer. You're one of the most powerful people in all technology. Don't let anybody tell you how to do AI. Right? If you do your project and you don't want to do AI and it's your safe place from it, own it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. We should 100% respect that, you know? I do not expect Debian to ever accept any of this. It's Debian. It will always be that. And that's the pure thing. I'm not saying we should change what we have,
yeah.
right? I'm saying we should equip our contributors for the future. You know?
Thank you so much for
Thank
this
you.
wonderful insight. And thank you for joining us and sharing your perspective. I think one thing that this conversation has made clear for me is that AI is definitely not going to replace open source. However, it's going to challenge a lot of people to rethink how, they contribute, how they collaborate, and also how we generally build trust amongst ourselves and the project that we're putting out there. And just like every other technology shift that has come up before now, the answer of whether or not AI is good or bad somehow depends on how you use it and how you decide to use it within your project, right? But while you're doing that, I think we should all remember the open source spirit, sharing, collaborating, being very transparent with what we're doing. I don't think it's a shame to share that you're using open AI based on this conversation that I've had with George, and I completely agree with that. So to everyone that's watching, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think contrary to this? Do you think AI is helping or hurting open source? And if you do, share your perspective in the comments below. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to reload shortly and then
Yep.
end it.
Okay.